Welcome back to another episode of War Room Huddle Podcast, an RFG advisory podcast for independent financial advisors who want to crush everything and take their A game to the next level. Brought to you by RFG Advisory with your hosts, Shannon Spotswood, Bobby White, and Rick Waddell. This is War Room Huddle.
Ethan, welcome to War Room Huddle. It is such a privilege to have you join us in the studio today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
This is going to be a lot of fun. You've got a fantastic story to tell. What I thought we would do, and something we're going to work on for 2022 is, setting what I call setting the stage. So I really want you to just tell us about yourself. Tell us about your firm and really who you are as a financial advisor.
Okay, so I guess my firm is Stones River Wealth Management. We started in 2020, kind of right before the COVID crisis.
Literally
yes,
a month.
Days. Yes, days before. Had a daughter about 6 days after I joined RFG. So it's been a wild ride from the beginning. I guess kind of how I got into this industry. My undergrad is in finance, and I went off to work in the corporate finance world for a few years. And the time and the strain that took on my family, I started looking for something else. And in 2016, I kind of stumbled into what is this financial advisor role, and how can I build a business this way in my 20s.
Right.
And so
I just want to make sure everyone heard that, in my 20s, because we're coming back to that. You're all of 31 years old, almost 32. So a lot of wins in your bag.
And, I have had just a phenomenal portfolio of mentors throughout the years. And I think that anybody getting into this industry really needs to lean on the people that have experience to be taught what they don't know. Bobby and I, we're going to spend some time tomorrow, and I told him I just want to bring my legal pad and just take notes, and just tell me what I don't know, how I can better serve my clients, how I can better serve my family, how I can better serve the people I'm around and the employees that work for me, how we all can kind of grow together. And kind of stumbling into this role, I was very, very interested after meeting with several of prospective clients and clients that became my first clients that were sitting across the table that were millionaires, multimillionaires, and they all kind of had one regret, that they didn't spend enough time with their family. And my wife and I, Katie, from the beginning started shaping that business of, I don't want it to be that way. There's got to be a way to build this business that I can focus on my family and spend time with. Katie was pregnant with Wyatt right when I took my Series 7 and 66, so that kind of created a little bit extra motivation to get everything built. And from the beginning, I've been very disciplined about appointment times and just protecting that family time. And I can't think of any other industry that would allow me to spend as much time and resources with my family as what I have now.
Time is something that we talk about all the time, and it was a real motivating factor in building the platform at RFG, because we all have the same 24 hours in the day. So, my father had a fantastic, one of my favorite quotes, which is, prioritize your time before you allocate your resources, and remember, your most valuable resource is your time. And you've really figured that out from the get-go. So we're gonna come back to that, because I really want to mine that. I think you're on the forefront, and I think that the global pandemic and everything that everyone has gone through with COVID has provided the opportunity to have a new perspective about the allocation of time, the prioritization of how you spend it, and most importantly, really rethinking what constitutes success in building an advisory practice. But before we get there, at the age of 29, you took the leap to independence. I mean, there's advisors out there who are in their late 50s, early 60s that are still kind of wringing their hands thinking like, oh, should I take the risk? Should I take the leap to independence? What made you do that? Why were you so certain that was a pivotal piece of the puzzle for you in long-term success?
Well, I guess that it kind of comes back to that conference table conversation that I've had with all of my clients. The people that I saw sitting across from me that were the most successful had kind of taken their destiny into their own hands, building their own business. And just the fun that I saw come from that. Third generations coming into play, hey, my grandson's taking over the CFO role this year. Hey, I'm spending most of my time fishing, and I come in and annoy my son and grandson, or my granddaughter is taking over the CEO role, and I couldn't be more happy for her. And that's something I wanted from my family. I've been in Tennessee. I'm the ninth generation of really, really hardworking people. And building something to protect that legacy and that family name to kind of catapult not only from an income standpoint, but the ability to be servants to the community around them, having the resources to help the people that need help, I think is huge. And I didn't see myself at the wirehouse that I was at being able to build that. I was kind of a cog in the machine, and we performed well and we did well, but I really wanted the ability to create something and leave it to my children. Proverbs tells us that a wise man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, and I think that there couldn't be a better thing to do to set those kids up and teach them, not only how money works, but how businesses work, and I think they can be successful in anything if they understand those things.
It's interesting how you framed up your decision-making matrix, because for you, it sounds like there was greater risk in not taking the leap to independence than there was risk in taking the leap.
There absolutely was. And, I'm a good old Southern boy. Politics are not something that I was taught from a young age. And it's not a way that I wanted to grow my business through, moving up in the company, gaining partnership and growing that way. I wanted to grow my business through my relationship with my clients that are very similar to me, similar to my parents, my grandparents, and how I can help them and their families move forward. That really defines success to me, not necessarily the rubrics that you would find at a traditional company.
I love thinking about fear and risk, and it surprises me. And I love to hear you say that, the intentionality of making that decision and taking control of your destiny, because, so often when we talk to advisors, the reasons why they don't want to become independent are, I'm afraid my clients won't follow me. And yet our data, as well as the industry data, confirms that 99% of clients follow the advisor. They have a relationship with you, not with the firm that you're with. And number two, I don't want to go through the headache and pain of repapering. Well, that's 3 months of your life.
Yes.
And instead you frame it up against this backdrop of your proverb, which is so beautifully stated. You can actually build an asset of value for your children's children.
And it's so big. And, the people, I guess, out there contemplating the decision, I would say the risk is, what does the next 30 years look like as this unwinds? And, when I looked at it from a standpoint of just the business side, just look at profitability, I couldn't afford not to.
Right.
And, I think that any advisor that's going to be profitable and has that go-getter spirit, they're leaving so much on the table, not building that for their family, and being able to put that in a way that allows them to be very, very giving to the people around them and to the community they serve.
Which is one of the most beautiful things, and what I think is, your superpower and advisor superpower is that you all get into this business to serve others. I mean, at the core of what we do, that is the unifying factor. You mentioned ninth generation Tennessean, which I just love as a girl born in Nashville, lots of respect there. How have you found, just from your perspective, it different building a, very successful practice in a small town versus, building an advisory practice in a metropolitan or in an urban environment?
Well, a small town comes with struggles just like a big city. One thing that is unique about a small town, when you've been there for a long time, these people have watched you grow up. They've watched you go through the struggles of trying to build your character, trying to build your business, the businesses that you've tried in the past. And they've kind of seen that process. Where in the big city, you're just kind of another number, this clean cut guy or gal that's in the corner office that's trying to get you to bring them their assets. And in the small town, you build your business by sponsoring the local football team and going to Hardee's in the morning and getting cups of coffee with people and taking flowers to widows on Valentine's Day and just spending time with people, getting out of the truck and walking out to the tractor and saying, hey, how's it going? I know that it was hot and I just brought you some water bottles today. It's different. You're looking at a landscape in my county of about 13,000 people. And so I love it because it gives me, I guess, a restraint to maintain my character. I always have to be consistent. In a big city, if I have someone that I don't particularly enjoy doing business with, that process is really easy to move on.
The breakup's way easier.
Yeah, in a small town, they're related to 15 of my clients. and so there's strengths and weaknesses to that. So I think that it's very, very interesting, and it can be very, very beneficial to someone who treats people with the utmost respect in every situation. My dad always has told me that mercy begets mercy.
Yeah.
And from a business standpoint in a small town, I think that's the best advice that you can give somebody, to just always be honest and always be merciful in all of your dealings, and you'll go very, very far.
How do you think about, 13,000 people in your county? How do you think about growth in the future? Because you're just getting started.
Yeah, I think there's this country song that, I've got big plans, and I think
every country song.
Yeah, I've got some big plans, and I think that people in a small town are just wonderful people. Just having this conversation, I think of some of the clients that I've had throughout the past that have been instrumental in building my business. I know of clients that have given me dozens of referrals. So if Ethan's helped me, he's helped me do this. Elena, the support staff, is wonderful for me. Kelsey planned this event for us. And it's just wonderful in that small town to cultivate those relationships. And it's amazing how much quicker your business grows in that environment. Because if you've got 60, 70 advocates out there screaming your name and praises of how they've done, hey, I'd love to take you and Ethan fishing with me, they're going to help you. And I think that that's something that we miss in the big cities, that just small town love for each other and kind of rising together.
Well, and it's going to be really interesting because, we did a webinar in December with Zane Terrence talking about the opportunity for advisors to have a seat at the table working with family businesses, and the amount of liquidity that is going to be created as a result of there not being a succession plan for these family-owned businesses, or the valuations being so attractive that to sell that business is going to create generational wealth. And I imagine that's a factor that is, that you're dealing with. I mean, you're ninth generation. There are a lot of family businesses in the South.
Yeah, absolutely. From anything, third generation businesses where cousins have different views on how things are going to be ran, to in my neck of the woods, lots of family farms of how is this going to be broken up amongst the kids and grandkids and great-grandkids, and how are we going to spin this out into the future. I think that the opportunity there is phenomenal, not only from a business standpoint, but for an education standpoint for advisors to kind of up their game for what they're used to dealing with and how they can be beneficial to their clients. Gibson and I were talking about the intimacy of that financial advisor relationship with their clients. I have clients tell me things that they don't tell their spouse. And, as that business is cultivated and it's time to kind of break it off into the next generation, I think that we have to be called to be a huge resource for those families to help them make good, sound financial decisions to say, hey, we've seen this before. When I have people walk into my office, I know this is your first time retiring, but we do it every day.
Right.
It's the same thing in the business transaction standpoint of, hey, I know this is your first time selling your business, but we do this every day. Let me tell you what I've learned throughout the years.
I love the use, and I haven't heard that before about the intimacy of the relationship, because you're 100% right. I always say money is so emotional, and there's so much that goes into it. And so really thinking about, your responsibility as an advisor through the lens of that intimacy and leveling up, like get ready to have these conversations well before there is a liquidity event, because all of us that have their own businesses, you're a business owner, I'm a business owner, these are your babies.
Yes.
I mean, you love your business, you obviously faith, family, and then you love your business.
Yes.
I mean, it's
an integral part of who we are.
Right.
And it has to be there, and I tell my clients, you're number 3 in my world. Number one's God, number 2's Katie, Wyatt, and Claire, and you fall in number 3. You should be very happy to be number 3.
Right.
And I think that, part of that process, from the continuing education to the developing the relationships and spending time with our clients is huge. And, when I think about, some of my clients that have been incredibly successful in their businesses of what's next and what does that look for? And I think that it's just like in any relationship, you have to sit down with them and, hey, tell me how you feel. Right. Tell me what you want. And I think that a lot of us from a math standpoint have trouble seeing things as a spreadsheet of, hey, this is the best way to break this up. And I think that's where some people go wrong. Instead of asking the business owner, tell me how you feel, tell me what you want, and how we can help you with this.
Let us craft a solution.
Are you an advisor looking to make the move to independence? RFG Advisory is an innovator in the wealth management industry with a winning culture and a fully integrated tech platform designed to help advisors take their practice to the next level. Let us get to know you at rfgadvisory.com.
All right. So one of the things that I admire most about you that I think you have done to a level that I haven't seen anyone else do, which is the prioritization of your time. And, you said to us a year ago, actually, you're like, I'm going to take the summer off. I'm going to travel with my kids. We're going to go see the national parks, 2 young children. And you made it happen. You're incredibly disciplined about your time. So you take the summers off. You're, thoughtful about how you spend the work week. You look at December very differently than most advisors. You don't look at it as like the rat race to wrap up the year. You really take that month off. How have you done this? Like, what is the practical tools? An advisor listening to this, like, wait a minute, let me get this straight. This guy is growing leaps and bounds. He's, 31 years old, building this enterprise value into his practice, really a sustainable, scalable business. You're thinking about, other office locations, and yet you have all this free time. How do you do it?
Well, I guess that it all comes down to I grew up in the farming world and just the discipline of working when we had to work. And we grew up working really hard and playing really hard. And that kind of translated into the next phase of my life. When I was a young advisor, I used to keep 2 jars on my desk, and one jar had 25 marbles in it. And by the end of the day, I wouldn't go home unless I had made 25 contacts. I'd moved a marble from one jar to the other. It was just a simple Ethan way of keeping track of things. One little trick that I learned from one of my mentors. And after reading and exposure to some great mentors and advisors in the industry, I realized that I could work really, really hard for 3 weeks a month and create some free time. That comes with some cuts. It comes with getting really good at telling people no.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that conversation that we talked about a little while ago that, I had people that had been very, very successful by other people's standards sitting across the table telling me, I wish I would have made more T-ball games, or I wish I would have made more ballet recitals, or I wish that I would have been around my grandkids more. And from the beginning, I said, I'm not going to be that person. And just like we build financial plans, you have to build your business plan around what you want. And if you're not intentional about what that finished product's going to look like, you're never going to get there. And so, my goal in 2021 was to take 2 months off for the summer and a week every month off. And I did that. And, that kind of simply started with ripping the Band-Aid off and telling Elena and Kelsey, do not schedule anything these weeks. And, we're just going to move forward and do this. And then, it takes some longer hours in the weeks that you're there, but I wouldn't trade it for the world, getting to spend time fishing with Wyatt and playing with Claire and just all of the things that I know are going to be so exciting in the future and that family time and the memories we're going to create.
So an advisor, I can hear the counterpoint on this. Like, well, there's always, an urgent issue with a client in that week that you're taking off in those 2 months. How do you deal with those fire drills?
So I typically, let's say I'm in Sarasota, I schedule those fire drill calls during nap time. So I'm not sacrificing any family time. Elena and Kelsey both know that I'll open up an hour from 1 to 2. I still have little children, 5 and 2, that still take naps, and I can solve most of the world's problems in an hour. And what a lot of clients and advisors don't realize is you're really not the ones putting out the fire. A lot of the fires are dealt with by your operations team, and a lot of it, I have to give kudos to my team to make this possible, is the operations team's coming in and saying, here's the solution. The client just wants to hear it from you. Right. And I think that it's also a process of kind of educating the clients that Elena and Kelsey are very, very capable people. Right. When you call them, there's really not a need to talk to me because I'm going to immediately call them and say, help me understand how this process works. And I think that you just have to trust the team that you've built, and you have to spend the time disciplining that team to be able to say, I've got this. Right. And that initiative from the whole team. I couldn't take credit for that myself. It's a team effort to make that possible.
What's interesting is you were talking about that. I was thinking about how so much of you being able to have this intentional quality time with your family really hinges on the requirement, and don't take this the wrong way, but the requirement of you setting your ego aside. Like, I don't have to be the most important person in the room. I don't have to be I'm not Superman. I don't have to race to every crisis. I'm going to empower my team to feel that they can handle this, that they have the tools, they have the resources, they have the access to me should they need it. But 1 hour, I guarantee you, if we did a snap poll right now, we're going to poll 100 advisors, and I said to them, you get 1 hour every day. You're going to take off a full week, and you get 1 hour during that week every day to solve all the problems. They'd be like, no way. How many of you think that, your businesses would fall off the radar and things, the wheels would fall off the wagon and all the rest of it? I bet we would have a unanimous feedback that advisors would say that's not possible.
Yeah, and I guess that, my background with being disciplined in sports and just trying to get to that next level really makes me look at my business and be honest with myself. If I pulled up all the Apple phones of those people and looked at what they were looking at on their phone, on their work computer, the conversations they were having in the break room while getting coffee, I would argue that they're probably not working more than 3 hours a day really solving problems. And, one thing about creating that sense of urgency, I have to solve all of these problems, is it makes you get incredibly organized and disciplined with your work time. And I have a thing, if I catch myself on Facebook or surfing the web at the office, I just go home. Yeah. Because I'm just wasting time, and I would much rather be with my family. Yep. There's no reason for me to be there just giving up time. And I think that is one of the most beautiful things that you can do, is kind of set your family up on that pedestal and say, you're important to me. You're the most important thing to me, and not just wasting time other places if your goal is to spend time with your family.
So how hectic are those 3 weeks? You got 2 weeks off 2 months off during the summer. You're working three weeks every month. How crazy are those 3 weeks?
Believe it or not that crazy. we are very unique that we have a really, really good relationship with all of our clients. I'm going to talk to most of my clients just running around throughout the week, whether that's slipping into a high school basketball game to support my clients' kids and grandkids and sitting with the grandparents that are clients, talking to them about what's going on in the world. I stay pretty apprised to most of my clients' lives, and we know them very well, whether that's fishing with them or golfing with them or shooting with them, or just getting a cup of coffee at the neighborhood restaurant that morning. Um, and so when you get into those reviews, it's not as hectic as you would think, because you've spent all year talking to them and spending time with them, and that review is more of a report card and a temperature check of how the other things are going. So it's not as crazy as some people would think.
I think this is one of the areas, we focus a lot on this with the work that we do in helping mentor admins and really skill up the team that surrounds the advisor so that they can spend all their time on client relationships and prospecting. But I think this is going to be one of the biggest shifts in our industry of, not just defining roles and responsibilities really clearly for the advisor's team, but the advisor really recognizing like we all benefit from allowing oxygen into our organizations, allowing those talented people that we've hired to be a part of our team to step into step fully into their capabilities and their skill set, allow them to make mistakes, allow them to jump into the deep end of the pool. And that to me is one of the most exciting, just kind of shifts that are happening in the industry. And it's fun. You're a young advisor. You're the future of the industry. It's fun that is a central tenet of success for you.
Yeah, it's so neat. And I know that a lot of people are, I guess, held back by allowing other people to make mistakes, but that's the only way that they learn.
Right.
And sometimes, it's just like raising a toddler. You've said, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And then you just have to watch them jump off the side of the couch.
Right.
And I think that that's the part of it, giving them that ownership in the business and the client relationship to make mistakes and to look back and say, wow, Elena, that's way better than I could have thought how to do this. That's a fantastic idea. Let's trudge forward. And there's just so much opportunity with learning on the diversity of the office and the different backgrounds and the different skills that everybody has and brings to the table that kind of catapults you to that next level in this business, and you actually create a business.
Right.
And that's a key
you actually have a business
factor in allowing other people to play with their strengths.
So if you were sitting down with an advisor, like clean sheet of paper, what are the 3 questions you're going to have them answer if they say, I want that. I want to take off 2 months. I want to put my family on a pedestal.
I guess my first question to them would be, what does that 2 months look like? And what does that week, a month look like? How can you make sure that you're not cheating on your family time, secretly trying to run the business in that
Right.
off time and think about the market and think about everything else that's going on? Are you really serious that you want to do this? And then the second thing is, are you spending enough time with your support staff, or do you have a way for someone else to coach that support staff to get them ready to kind of embark on you being hands off? Hey, Ethan can only be reached this week by satellite phone.
Right.
And it's going to be really, really crucial if I call him. And the second thing would be, when we talk about your time as your asset, I would actually say that my children are my biggest asset. Because everything that I'm building, all the time, all the wealth, everything that I'm cultivating goes to them.
Yep.
And if I lose them away from the character or the values or the relationship with dad that I thought they ought to have, it doesn't matter all the time that I've spent spinning my wheels up until that point. And then the third question that I would ask them is, how much healthier would your relationships be if you learned to say no to the things that were causing you stress and problems in your life and you just got rid of it and said, hey,
So
this
what
is
does that mean? What does that look like? I mean,
I have a business coach, Michael Burt, that I've used for several years, and we have our Monday morning meeting as a team, and I've used one of his quotes from Garth Brooks on that meeting is, I just want to show up and sing. Yeah. And that's kind of cultivated too in 2022. I don't want to do anything that I don't want to do. And I know that's kind of selfish sounding at first, but it's a beautiful world when you learn to say no to those people that are pulling you down and distracting you from where you want to get to, and say no to those time constraints that, are not profitable for your business. They're not profitable for your family. They're not profitable for your health. And just move on. And there's just such a peace that comes with just putting that line in the sand and saying, I'm not doing that anymore. At least in my life, it has been incredibly refreshing because I've created all of this time that I can use doing the things that I want to do, like teaching my son how to cast a fishing pole and, taking my daughter to ride horses and doing fun things that will benefit my family in the future.
I mean, it's like we can do a whole advisor. I feel like we need like an ebook on like how to say no. Like the mantra of like, I don't want to do things I don't want to do. It's okay to say that.
Yeah.
It's empowering to say that. And it's amazing. Like the thing that is so fascinating to me is that you have a force multiplier effect on your practice when you start getting really clear. What's my mission? What's my vision? What's my values? How am I spending my time? Like, those are more important than, than sitting there like, who are my centers of influence? Like once you get these big rocks identified and solved, that's where you get this like exponential growth creation.
Yeah. And I used to have a CEO that I worked for, and he said, you can't manage what you can't measure. Yeah. And that's always stuck in my head. And I think as new advisors, especially at the Wirehouse that I kind of grew up in this business with, it was all about prospecting, and I think that we get that ingrained in our head for so long that we actually forget how to prospect. We forget what makes us unique. And I know Bobby talks about it in passion prospecting. Yeah. My best clients have come from fishing and hunting and golfing and doing things that I enjoy. And those people will be a joy in my life. And part of that saying no is say, I've got a $3 million prospect that just doesn't identify with who I am. It's okay to say no to that. Right. There will be another one. There's 7 billion people in the world and I only want 150 of them. Right. Surely I can find them. And I think that, just after you've gotten through a little while of doing it this way, you get the confidence of, okay, it's all going to be all right. I've left the Wirehouse. I've decided to take off more time with my family. And you'll be amazed at how profitable your business is, because your business, it depends on your health. Not only emotionally, financially, spiritually, you have to be running on all cylinders all the time to do this job, to maintain the intimacy with your clients, to maintain the emotional resilience from the ups and downs in the market, from the mistakes that are made in the world, and your clients' mistakes, your mistakes, everything that comes into play. And if you're not being disciplined about taking care of yourself in all of those facets of your life, you're not going to be successful in this business.
Yeah. I call it's a sprint marathon.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a sprint marathon. I mean, we're really engaged in this marathon, but we're kind of operating in this sprint mindset. And so how do you maintain that optimal health to be able to sprint? You're 100% right.
Yes.
We always have a choice of what attitude we're going to bring into life. The attitude that we bring into it is up to us.
It's worth doing, it's worth freaking crushing it. It's in the business world too. It's adaptable and it's transferable. I transfer that over to my business dealings and dealing with my employees, dealing with my partners. If it's worth doing, not only is it worth doing right, but it's worth freaking crushing.
The ultimate goal isn't to succeed or fail. The ultimate goal is to give it everything you have for something that's on your heart.
What is absolutely 100% true to you that you know for sure that is going to set you up for success and that's going to pull you through the toughest moments of your life?
RFG Advisory is getting ready to crush everything like you've never seen before, and we want you to be a part of it. You'll be a part of a special elite group of advisors who will spend 2 days with veteran Navy SEAL Team 6 hero and founder of Dynamis Alliance, Dom Rosso, with Navy SEAL Team hero and best-selling author of Man in the Arena, Eddie Gallagher, and to cap it all off, sports icon and motivational speaker, Tim Tebow. Morning crush it workouts with the SEALs, bourbon tasting, panel discussions bridging SEAL team training to being a high-performing advisor. Head on over to rfgwc.com to sign up now for the Warrior Advisor Conference 2022 and claim your spot. Okay, so you brought up passion prospecting. This is something that we believe really strongly in, is that you've got to align your passions with your prospecting. Otherwise, you're just going through the motions. It's too hard.
Yes.
It's too hard. So how do you do that? What does passion prospecting look like for you?
For me, I love to fish. There's probably nothing more in this world that I enjoy than being out on the water. There's just something freeing about being out in the Gulf or on the ocean or on the lake and looking around and not even seeing land.
Thus Stones River.
Yes. And it
you
is
named your firm after.
Yes, it's really, really ingrained into my life of what I appreciate. And it's so neat being able to share those experiences with other people. In small town Tennessee, I run into people that are in their 50s and 60s that have never even been on an airplane. And, I'm telling them, hey, let's go down to Delacroix and go redfish fishing in Louisiana in the Gulf. And they're like, how do we even get to Louisiana? And just the memories that are created there and the relationships that are built on those trips are phenomenal. And not only, when you're down there, you're running into people who love the same things. And, just in the lobby, I was talking to a dairy farmer. It's just, hey, we have something that is in common that we love. We enjoy being out on the farm and seeing the cattle and seeing God's creation and just our little vapor of time to get to participate in it, and I don't want to waste that. And I think running into people at the shooting range, at the golf course, out fishing, out hunting, I feel like there's a kindred spirit there of people that don't want to waste that. And financially, I think it's our calling to say, hey, we can help you maintain this. Let's take the stress of everything else off the board, and let's spend time fishing. Let's spend time hunting. And just some of my...
So do you carve out a part of your P&L that you dedicate towards hunting, fishing, golfing?
Absolutely.
This is an intentional spend.
Absolutely. And that's probably the most profitable marketing dollars I'll ever spend is doing that. Not only just the fun that comes from my participation in it, but just the time and the resources that go into it are just multiplied tenfold in business development and business growth.
It's amazing to me, when we talk about this, which is crazy, there's almost a valley that advisors have to leap over. They have to leap this Rubicon to not feeling guilty. Right. I feel so guilty, fill in the blank, pursuing my passion. But if you flip that on its head, to your point, this is how you build meaningful memories, relationships, and really, forge that intimacy.
Yeah, and it goes back to, how do you take time off? You have to be intentional, and don't waste time, and I know advisors that have wasted years and years and years and years of their life just spinning their wheels doing what everyone told them to build their business, and they're still kind of sitting there. Yes, they have a profitable business, but they're not thriving.
Right.
And our clients want to see us thrive, and I want to see myself and my clients thrive together. And, there's nothing like, taking a client's grandson or granddaughter out for the first time and seeing them catch that first big fish. And just those memories, sending them those pictures in a frame that I see sitting throughout the house as I go over. It's just so fun growing the business that way. So much different than, knocking on doors or cold calling or any other prospecting methods of the past.
Yeah. And that's really it. I think that there's never been a more exciting time for advisors to grow their businesses, but it is not looking in the rearview mirror.
Absolutely
Like
not.
it is, this business is it already looks radically different in the next 5 years. This generational wealth transfer and the emotional connection to money and one of the things I really admire, and I know a lot of people struggle with, Gen Z or the millennials. What's younger than the millennials? I forget what they're called. Are they
I don't even,
Zs?
I think so.
I think it's Gen Z. I think it's Gen Z. They, when I've got a 17-year-old, so I'm not sure she's quite old enough to be Gen Z, but she's pretty close. And talking to, young people in their late teens and their early 20s, they are hyper aware of the generations that have preceded them and the kind of the regrets of gave everything to fill in the blank job. And what did I really get in return? And, some people will look through that and say the pendulum has swung too far and they have too many expectations about work-life balance and how, what should you expect out of a career? What should you expect out of a mentorship relationship, out of your boss, all the rest of it? I actually think it is like long overdue that we are having these conversations and that we're being really thoughtful about how are we building our business, who are we doing business with, and what does this mean for the overall quality of our lives?
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that. A couple months ago, I ordered this kind of leather journal from Amazon, and I think it's got a few hundred pages in it. And I took it to my grandparents, and I told them, I want you to write down what you wish your parents had taught you.
Mm-hmm.
And through the generations, I had my parents do it. I did it for my children. And just how that advice changes and how we've grown as a family and what we're working towards as a family and being very, very intentional on how to get there. And it kind of amazes me that I see a show like Swiss Family Robinson, and I'm envious of living on a desert island. Hey,
treehouse.
I would love to just have no phone for a few years and just spend a few years in a treehouse with my children, teaching them how to fish and teaching them the basic skills of life that I think they ought to know. And I think we've just been too busy for too long to pay attention to the people beside us.
I meant to ask you this when we were talking about taking the time off and the week off. What do you do with your phone? What do you do with your phone during those 2 months or that week off? Do you silence it? Do you turn off your email? What do you do?
I have to. Right now I don't have it with me in the podcast, but I just have to hit idle and just let it go.
It be.
And just be thankful that I have the people behind me to make that work.
Yeah. Let's all try that. It's like goals. Okay, so one of the things that I really admire about you is that you've woven faith into, it's such a part of you, obviously, but you've woven it into your practice. How have you done that? This is really interesting. I love exploring this topic because I'm a girl from, grew up in Seattle, spent 20 plus years in San Francisco. And it was all of this was very separate, right? You did not talk about God at work and you didn't talk about your faith and all these things were very bright lines and very compartmentalized. And something I love about the South is there is a more openness, living in faith-based communities. And you've really woven this into your practice. It's not only a part of who you are, but it's a part of the business you're building. How have you done that?
Well, I think that it goes back to the saying no conversation. You have to be who you are all the time or you won't be happy. Yeah. And I've seen too many people, on the religious side of the spectrum and the non-religious side of the spectrum, try to live lives that aren't their own. And the discomfort and the unhappiness that comes.
They're not authentic.
Yeah. And I don't want to have notes of this client is affiliated with this particular political party, and this client is affiliated with this. It's just when you come to the Stones River Wealth Management office, you get Ethan.
Right.
And that might be good, that might be bad. But I just think it's so refreshing just to get to be me. Yeah. And anybody that's not living that lifestyle, I think you're leaving a lot of happiness on the table. I think as Christians, which is the faith I protest to be, we're called to tell people about Jesus, and we're called to live a life that kind of lives that life like house out on the water. And we're also called to just be good people, and be honest. And when somebody comes to me and says, hey, what do you think about this? I tell them, most people, I hate politics. You won't find somebody who hates politics more than me, but this is what I think, and I don't have to worry about, did I tell client A this and client B that? And that would just be such a pull in so many directions in my life. I couldn't keep that organized in my head.
One of the things that we really love, and you embrace this so fully, is helping advisors tell their authentic story. Branding and marketing for us is really a passion project, and the reason for it is, what I think one of our greatest weaknesses as an industry is everybody line up your financial advisors. They all look the same, talk the same, walk the same. Why on earth? When you pull up these, bios, everybody's got the same. I've been a financial advisor for X number of years, and I hold this and this and this credential, and I value my clients because of fill in the blank. They trust me. I build trusting relationships. Why on earth would we not celebrate our authentic selves? Because where I always thought there was a real kind of hypocrisy with the wind up corporate definition and bio is you're expecting this incredibly intimate relationship with your clients. You're bringing them, you're delivering them a service, and you're bringing them into a relationship with you and asking them, talk about your emotions, talk about your future, talk about your goals, talk about your fears, your hopes, your dreams for you, for your family, for your children. But you're going to not tell them anything about yourself, and you're going to be this wind up financial advisor. It makes no sense.
Yeah, I think that, we used to have a little bench outside the courthouse in Woodbury where all the old men would sit and whittle. And for those of you who don't know what whittling is, it's just taking a piece of stick and a knife and you make it down to nothing. It really has no purpose. I guess you can carve some neat characters into a walking stick or something. But just hearing those people tell the stories of their life and what they've learned. And I think that you can learn a lot from listening to someone tell, hey, here's the mistakes I've made. And especially when I'm sitting down with clients younger than me saying, hey, here's some of the mistakes I made at your age and I wish that I wouldn't have. And it kind of removes that barrier of, okay, this person on the other side of the table is human. He's not just putting us into that spreadsheet or that financial planning software and telling us this is the optimal way to achieve happiness and wealth. He's trying to coach us to a better life. And he's explaining that there's going to be pain. I've felt it. This is how we work through it. This is how my wife and I as a couple work through it. And I think people appreciate that a lot more than they appreciate any fancy bar graph or pie chart that you could put up on the TV. Is you just turning the screen off and saying, hey, let me help you. Let's talk about what's causing you problems and how we can fix it.
I love that. All right. So you were an All-American trap shooting. You were on the All-American trap shooting team.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so the very first time that Ethan and I talked, the entire conversation, he's like, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am, yes, Mrs. Spotswood. And I finally, remember that?
Yes,
I finally said, I'm like, I feel like I'm 100 years old. You have to call me Shannon and don't say ma'am to me again. I know, it's 9 generations deep. I mean, it's hard to shake it. Okay, so that is shotgun clay target shooting.
Yes, ma'am.
What does it mean to be an All-American in this? That sounds like a very precise sport.
Yeah, it comes down to, everybody shooting trap, which is a shotgun discipline across the United States and across the world. That to be on the All-American team, you go shoot in several states to earn All-American points. And you get points by winning other states' state tournaments along with your own and regional tournaments, whether that be in Florida or Mississippi or Texas or Nevada. You're going to be traveling around the country trying to beat the other people in your age group at shooting. And we loved it. There's 7 spots reserved for the top 7 shooters in the world and in the country. And the world championships.
So you're one of those.
I am one of those. I got to hang my hat and get my medal on that. And it taught me so many things. Just simply in competitive shooting, if you miss one, you're pretty much out of it. You might win with 199 out of 200, but very rarely. And I had a coach one time tell me, unless you have a time machine, you can't take it back.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to learn to refocus after that mistake and hit the rest to
Mm-hmm.
maintain that top spot in the country. And it taught me so much about this industry and how to psychologically approach what I'm doing, because I'm going to make mistakes from an investment policy. I'm going to make mistakes in so many things, but how do you just go past that and say, okay, let's recalibrate. Let's be honest. Let's have open conversation and move on, and not allow yourself to be emotionally shaken by the problems that arise, and think logically of how to think through them, and just hold yourself to a competitive standpoint that I'm going to beat all of the people around me, and I'm going to continue to sharpen my skills to where I can just keep getting better and better and better every year. And I wouldn't trade that experience for the world.
I mean, it's interesting is how much of your discipline do you think stems from being an elite athlete and competing at this level?
I think so much of it. I think that, in Tennessee, we have a saying that it's hard to get away from your raisin. And, and I think a lot of that was ingrained by my family. I was very, very fortunate to be surrounded by incredibly disciplined people growing up. And I think that kind of caveated into the shooting sports. And that just refined it, working with those sports psychologists and understanding how to turn on and off the focus. And in this world, I think that helps with that vacation time of being able to turn it back off after you've turned it on. I think is just as important as turning on that discipline. And just some of the things that I've learned through the shooting industry, traveling and meeting the people all over the United States and learning their stories. And most people that shoot are not very young. And so, out there with all the old men sitting around the RVs, learning about, their stories and, the history of the farmers of Illinois and, going out and, hey, my dad owns a casino and I shoot in Las Vegas, and just so many neat people. I think it made me this well-rounded person that appreciates how everybody's gotten to where they're going.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you've accomplished so much. I mean, you're not even 32 yet. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
In 5 years, I really hope to have definitely found exactly the niche of people I want to be around and have refined that, getting really good at saying no and refining that group of people that I work with every day. And I really see us having 3 to 5 offices open and flourishing and helping cultivate new, not necessarily young advisors into successful practices and helping them build the lifestyle that I've created. I know in 5 years I won't miss a T-ball game. I won't miss anything that happens.
You've already checked that box. You're I already got that.
I'm checking that box and will continue to check that box regardless of how big the business grows. And if the business gets to a point where I can't check that box, I'll say, you know what, we're done.
Or you're going to hire someone in.
Yeah, or hire someone in. We'll figure it out as we go. But in 5 years, I would love to be somewhere in that $500 to $600 million of assets under management range and have those offices open to continue to grow the business.
What is, you've been fortunate, as you mentioned, to have several influential mentors. If you were sitting across the table from a young advisor just getting started in the business, what's, I'm sure you have tons of advice, but what's one piece of advice that you would give them?
To stay focused. The people that are successful in this industry are the people that stay. And I had an advisor that gave me that advice when I started, and I didn't understand it till I made it through about the 4th year in the industry. And I made it through the highs and lows of starting as advisor, getting that first client, getting fired by that first client, and understanding that if I just stay, I can create something really, really special. And just having the discipline to commit for that time period to say, I'm going to build it and I'm going to make it.
I agree with you. We talk about this all the time with our board, and one of our board members is on the board of Under Armour, and he says, in the early days of Under Armour, that they would write up on the whiteboard as they started their meetings, don't forget to sell t-shirts. Because it's really easy for all of us to get distracted in our businesses. And you're like, ooh, bright, shiny object, look at the rabbit. Like, there's all of these different opportunities of how you can go about making decisions to grow your business. But it is, I think those that are most successful are incredibly laser focused on what is it that we are doing, what makes us great, and how are we going to day in and day out, just execute on that mission.
Yeah, I think that there's nothing more true, that you just have to grind it out. I can't tell you how many people have told me, hey, you're too young to do this job. You're not going to make it. I can't tell you.
I love those people.
88% attrition rate, and for the people under 25, it's like 96. Right. And so, just all of those voices in my head kind of catapulted me forward. I guess out of my stubbornness, I made it, because I wasn't going to let them be right. And that's where that just have faith in the system and just stay whatever it takes to make it.
All right. We always like to ask, give me your favorite quote. You've sprinkled a few good ones throughout, but favorite quote, favorite business book or most impactful business book.
So I guess my favorite quote is from Robert Browning. His poem, A Death in the Desert, that is, progress, man's distinctive mark alone, not God's, not the beast's, man partly is and wholly hopes to be. Meaning that God and the evil in this world are as perfect as they're ever going to be. And our one job as humans is just to make progress, whether that's you're on the plateau or you're working up a mountain or you're down in a valley. We just got to put one foot in front of another every day and just keep making progress to keep trying to get to the best person we can be.
Oh, I love that. Love that. All right. Favorite book.
I'd love to read, and I have so many books. And, I think that a lot of wisdom can be grabbed from the book of Proverbs. If you'll just sit there and apply those to your life, just the little sayings. I have a little camouflage version of Proverbs that I take with me hunting, and I try and refresh myself.
We might need that for some Become a Warrior swag.
Yeah, and it's just so many things. Solomon, the wisest man that ever walked on the earth, wrote the book. It's wise to spend a little bit of time in there. And I really struggled on what would be my favorite book. And there's just so many things. And I think that in reading as an advisor, it's good to get so many different viewpoints, because you can kind of hammer out what you want to be.
Right. Ethan, it was such a treat having you in War Room Huddle. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to War Room Huddle. War Room Huddle is a production of RFG Advisory, a leading innovator in the wealth management industry. To learn more about RFG Advisory, head on over to rfgadvisory.com and subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of War Room Huddle.